Well, it's Foreign Affairs Day. We're going to end the week off talking about foreign affairs. I like to, and I want to get your perspective on this. You can reach out to me by going to jdrucker.com/talk. I want to know if you guys like what I've been trying to do lately. For the longest time, the show has been really more of a potpourri, I guess, smorgasbord of different various topics. And this week, I've been trying to keep every episode, every 2 hour episode, focused on a single topic, right? Not necessarily just one story, but, if we're going to be talking about domestic terrorists, I want to talk about domestic terrorists, 3, 5, 8, 10 stories about that. Or if today, for example, we're talking about foreign affairs. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about Europe. We're going to be talking about China. We're going to be talking about the Middle East. We might, if we have time, we might even be talking a bit about Africa. There's a lot of things happening in the world that we need to discuss. And as an America First guy, America First patriot, obviously my focus is here in the United States, but we can't ignore what's happening abroad, especially as it affects us. I have an interview here shortly with Scarlett Karoleva. I always get her name wrong. Karoleva, I think. I'll ask her. Get her wrong. I mean, she's been coming on the show fairly regularly for the last month and a half now, and I for some reason just cannot get that name right. Scarlett. We'll just call her Scarlett. She'll be talking about Europe and giving us a report on what's happening over there. Meanwhile, again, we have, but to be clear, one of the reasons that I always look there is because Europe, what happens in Europe is going to bleed over here almost every time. There are certain events. Should probably turn off my phone. Certain events that you don't want to. Sorry, so unprofessional. This is like the fifth time this happened to me lately. I used to be very methodical about making sure my phone was off before doing this, wasting time. Anyway, yeah, what happens in Europe, a lot of times it will bleed over to here. And we see it time and again. And this is why I like having Scarlett on the show to tell us what's happening there, because they are our brothers and sisters. We do have a kinship. Many of us do, just as the origins of our nation. Most Americans are still of European descent. And I know, we've got all sorts of descents here in the United States. That's what makes us who we are. But then we also have a whole lot of more people coming in from other nations illegally, and that's actually destroying our nation. So you take the good with the bad. I want to take the good, and I want to get rid of the bad. How's that for a solid stance? So let me know if you like this format, or if you prefer me to go back to talking about anything, basically news of the day. I'm good with either. I want your all's opinion on this. Last time I asked for your opinion on something like this, I got flooded, and it was awesome because it really rejuvenates me. It makes me feel okay, cool. So people are like actually listening, paying attention, and most importantly, wanting to chime in. There was a long time ago when I was doing, not too long ago, but a while back when I was doing shortwave radio, we were reaching a worldwide audience, and I would be getting calls from across the country and across the globe, and it was awesome. And because we've gone to this new format, focusing on Rumble and Truth Social and places like that, I don't really get to communicate with y'all nearly as much as I used to, and I miss it. I miss having the direct connection with the audience. So best way to do it is to hit me up, jdrucker.com/talk, or you can go to my open DMs on X at jdrucker, and I will be happy to converse with you about things. We are trying to be more focused, more biblical. I want my biblical worldview to shine through. With the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a lot of us have been changed. I hope that most of us have been changed for the better, and that is just in honor of a great young man who was taken too soon from us. So yeah, Foreign Affairs Day. What's happening around the world, and more importantly, how is it going to affect us? We'll soon see. Let's get to. Let me see. Yep, got it. Well, let's go to Scarlett. Well, it's that time of week again, folks. It's time to get to just a fantastic friend of the show, Scarlett. She is in Europe. She's going to break it down for us, what's happening, all the crazy things, and it just seems to be getting crazier and crazier every day. Scarlett, how are you doing?
I mean, I'm back on the show, so I could not be better. But like I always say, I'm good. Europe, on the other hand, oh boy, where do I begin?
Let's start with let's go to my good friend Keir Starmer. Things are getting crazy with this whole push for digital IDs. We knew it was going to come. I'll admit, had you
Yeah.
asked me last year where it would start, Great Britain, the British Empire, no, I wouldn't have thought it would be there. I thought maybe Canada, maybe like New Zealand, but it seems as if the real push by the globalists is starting there in England. What do you know about that?
So, Starmer announced that from 2029 they want to enroll a mandatory what they will call the Brit card. And the reason why they want to implement it is to stop illegals from working in the working market in the UK. That is the excuse that they're using. Now, look, I don't have to talk about what the downsides are of the digital identity. You know it, our viewers know it, I know it. It's just a tool that is being abused for the government to seize more control over us. The problem is now that they don't only use that as an excuse, but they also have a self created problem, which is mass migration, illegal immigrants flooding the market, taking jobs, and now they say, oh, you know what? We created a problem, but we also have a solution for it. The only thing that you need to do is to give up your freedom and privacy for it in return. So the beautiful thing of it is, on the other side is that actually the people of Britain has risen up against it. They have started a petition that actually gained 2.4 million signatures in only just a couple of days. So this is definitely a big blow to the Starmer government. And you know what? One thing that I do want to say to Starmer is thank you. Because every time he is doing something that is bad for the country, which is actually, let's face it, every day, it's just actually another vote for Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is still growing in the polls. Labour, on the other hand, they dropped 5 points this week in the polls. So, yeah, Keir Starmer is doing a very good job digging his own grave. The thing is that I really want to also elaborate on that is that we see a sort of pattern because this is not only happening in the UK. I am from the Netherlands, and in my country, 2 weeks ago, there was a very peaceful protest against mass migration and the asylum policy in our country. Now, unfortunately, this protest was hijacked by some football hooligans. And the only thing that our politicians talked about is how the extreme right was escalating the whole situation without actually really looking at what was underneath it. Is that there were 10, I think 12,000 people even coming together for a peaceful protest. It was just hijacked by some hooligans. Let's also not forget that the police was involved in it because they were directing these hooligans in a wrong direction, which led to the whole situation escalating. Now again, the government is saying we have a solution for that. We should have extra cameras in places where there are protests, which is terrible, you know. People are afraid to go and protest because they're afraid they will be recognized. That's why they're wearing face covers. And it's a human right. It is a human right to go out on the streets and protest. So we see a pattern. The government is creating a problem, but no worries, because they're also the ones having a solution. And that solution is totalitarianism.
Of course. The use of the Hegelian dialectic has been constant in Western society for a long time. This is one of the prime examples of it. You said that people are rising up. People are starting to they're signing petitions. Do you foresee? Is it possible that this could escalate even further? We've already seen challenges in across London, especially with obviously the mass migration and the what I would call an invasion and takeover there. Combine these two with an authoritarian government with the mass migration. Could this actually turn into something even more dangerous, more violent in the future?
Yeah, I don't want to rule that out because the problem is still not being addressed, and the fact is that people feel that they are not being listened to. They
Right.
just want to be heard, they want to be seen again, they want to be treated as a first-class citizen instead of an ADM. And I know that this is a sentiment that resonates with all of Europe, whether they are based in the UK or in Germany or in Italy. It is like if you come as an asylum seeker, you get everything for free, free housing, free healthcare. If you are getting the permission to stay in the Netherlands, you are giving an You are the first one who will be allowed to get social housing over someone who has lived here in this country for years and is still waiting for a house. So people are frustrated with that. And I'm talking about, these are the obvious ones. But of course, we see that mass migration has led to women being afraid to go on the streets in the evening or cycling back home, changing their route because they want to avoid having to pass an asylum center. The government doesn't listen. And at this point, to be very frank with you, I think they do it on purpose. They want the whole situation to escalate so they can enforce things like a Brit ID or a chat control, which I will talk about a little bit later. They want to escalate it. By this is not a mistake. This is intentional. This is by design. So
Mm,
there's a very real risk that as long as citizens are being unheard and things will go down in their quality of life, in their safety, yes, I will not deny that there's a very high risk that things will escalate because what is there left? We try to change the system. We try to vote the right people in government. We see that it's not working. So what else is there left to do? And I hope it will not escalate because I tell you that all the time, JD, I am absolutely against violence. Absolutely against it. Violence will only know losers.
absolutely, and it's you know we here in the United States, obviously, it has even a greater potential repercussion because of the firearms that we have here. But we have seen that you don't necessarily need firearms to engage in very terrible things. This morning there was a terrorist attack. What some are assuming, we don't have a whole lot of details as we're putting
Yeah.
this out there, but what have you heard? What do you know about? I guess what they're not calling the Manchester Yom Kippur attack.
Yeah, it's a terrible news, and I really wanna pay my sincere sympathy to all of our Jewish friends and watchers. It's terrible, Yom Kippur is their holiest day. Was actually a stabbing and a car ramming at the synagogue in Manchester. So far, we know that two are confirmed dead as a result of that. Now, not a lot is known about the perpetrator. There is a picture allegedly of the man in front of the synagogue. You can see that he looks what it looks like an bomb belt, and he doesn't look particularly like he is from Manchester or the UK. What I find very painful is to see yet again that there's another pattern. Is that I think Europe is getting back to the 2015 terrorist threat levels. It was just yesterday they actually stopped the opening of Oktoberfest, which is a very big festivity in Germany, because
Hmm.
of a fake bomb threat. Now they were thank God it was a fake bomb threat, so they were able to reopen. But then later that evening, there was another fake bomb threat in Zaventem, which is Brussels airport. We know a couple of years ago there was another bomb attack there as well. So it's a pattern. And the worst part, which is really upsetting to me, is the hypocrisy of our politicians. We have on the one hand Keir Starmer, who now is paying his sympathies to the Jewish community, which is, let's face it, this man has allowed hatred to enter the borders with all of the pro Palestinian protests, with recognizing Palestine as a state. He has allowed that hate to be infiltrated within the society. He cannot say that he's surprised that this is the outcome as a result of it.
Right.
And what's worse, and I want to really say, like, again, like, it's in the UK, it's in Europe, there's a politician in the European Parliament who it came out now in the news that he wants to postpone uh, showing a draft about a law that should make it easier to deport illegal immigrants. Because the Netherlands is almost having general elections, this is a topic he wants to avoid because it would be bad for his party. And it's terrible. It shows us that our politicians, they care more about their political gains than actually about our safety. This
Right.
is the whole reason why Europe is burning because we are dealing with incompetent leaders who have allowed mass migration. And as a result of that, We should all fear for our lives because we've got thousands and thousands of these sleepers. We just don't know it because a lot of them came into our borders unvetted. So I think this is only the beginning, and I really hope, JD, I really hope, JD, that in a couple of months we'll look back at this and you would say you were completely wrong. I really hope that I'm wrong in this, but I fear for the worst, realistically.
Well, Scarlett, so far you haven't been wrong about really anything. So that's unfortunate in this case because you're right. I do think that it's ramping up into 2016 levels, and maybe even we could go all the way back to days when terrorism was much more rampant. But here's the thing: is there a solution? Like can you mentioned Nigel Farage? Does tell my American audience, like, we know what happens. President Trump got elected. We understand our political system. We understand the interactions with Congress and majorities. It's different across Europe with the parliamentary system. What could Farage do, and when could he do it? Like, when could we? Is it possible that we could see him as prime minister at some point in the very near future, or do we have to wait? Break it down for us. How does it work?
Yeah, so there will be elections for new prime minister in 2029. We can only pray that Nigel Farage will win, but if he's continuing in the same path as he's going right now, that is very likely to win. What we also have to talk about is the fact that in the UK there's another party growing, which is Advanced UK. So there are two strong conservative parties growing. The problem is that if both of them become equally popular, they will be so divided that unless they work together, this will still be a win for the Conservatives and Labour, which means that nothing eventually will change. And I come from a country with a lot of mini parties. Yeah, the Netherlands is very good at having splinter parties, what we call them, because everyone is allowed to have their own opinion. At the end of the day, when you form a coalition, you get policy that makes everyone miserable. So I hope that I hope that Keir Starmer will continue doing what he's doing, which is digging his own grave. Essentially, it will only be in favor of Nigel Farage. Um, but the problem is, I really wonder: do we have until 2029 to wait? I don't think we do. So we
No,
have
that's
to we have to take responsibility in that as citizens as well. We cannot be dependent on our politicians anymore. Now, what I've seen a lot, and I think this is very positive, is that a lot of people go and protesting. Again, I come from the Netherlands. There's been some protests in cities where they wanted to open new asylum centers. And as a result of these protests, there will not be any more asylum centers. So I think we have to take our responsibility because we have seen time and time again we cannot rely on our politicians. We need to go out, we need to protest peacefully. Mind you, I want to reply that again peacefully, but we cannot just sit silent and wait for our politicians to keep us in safety because that will not happen.
yeah, and it seems as if they're trying to even go against your ability to get together, to protest, to do everything. I know that the European Union and your grand poobah, grand leader of the EU is trying to stifle conversation as much as possible. Why don't you tell us more about that?
Can you be a bit more specific?
Oh, sorry. I was referring to deleting messages happening
Oh,
all over again.
yes.
Sorry. Transition. Horrible.
Yes.
Horrible. Slap.
No.
Got it.
No, don't you worry. Oh, JD, you know what? Of course, we have to talk about Ursula von der Leyen, you know?
Ursula.
I mean, the week isn't complete without her. Guess what Ursula von der Leyen did? She deleted her messages again. I know you must be thinking, here we go again. Well, here's the deal. She and Macron, Emmanuel Macron, her best friend, they had some messages about a pretty important deal. Actually the Mercosur, which is a deal that is supposed to merge some countries of Latin America with Europe, which again is a very bad trading deal for Europe. But there was a journalist from Follow the Money. He wanted to see those messages. He requested it at the European Commission. They made him wait for 15 months. 15 months only to deny that request. And then they said, oh, yeah, Ursula von der Leyen, she uses, in Signal, you have this option that after one day or like a week, your messages disappear. So the messages aren't there anymore. Well, this is, of course, what we see all the time. The European Commission, you can ask to access about certain documents, messages. They're always unable to provide them. And you know what the worst part is? I'm not even talking about all the lawsuits against Ursula von der Leyen or the fact that she has too much of confidence that wants her gone. No. The worst part is that she is delusional because, wow, she doesn't want you to read her messages. She wants to read your messages. That's right. The European Commission has this brilliant idea to put an end to private messaging. And the reason behind this, they claim, is to fight child pornography. Now, look, this is what the European Parliament and Union in general do brilliantly. They're good with words and framing. Because let's face it, everyone in their right mind is against child pornography. It is terrible. We should fight it 100%. And if that would be the case, I would 100,000% be in favor of it. But the truth is that they abuse it as an excuse. Just like with mass migration, oh, now we need a Brit card. Now they say, oh, we need to fight child pornography. Basically, of course, it will solve nothing because the police will have such an overflow of information and data that they will not be able to streamline it, control it. Also, let's face it, there will be so many loopholes. Imagine your grandfather and your kids bring your grandchildren to your house. You put them in bath, and you're like, "Oh, that's so cute. I want to send a video to my son to see how cute they are." Then that can already be deemed as child pornography. So things are very vague. It's another step towards a totalitarian state, and it's also how hypocritical it is. Okay, she can delete messages, but she wants to read all your messages. And mind you, the messages that you and I send are maybe a bad meme
Hmm.
about Dogecoin or whatever. The messages she's sending is worth billions and billions and billions of taxpayers' money. But that's the EU in a nutshell. The hypocrisy, the abusing of problems so they can gain more control over your life. I feel like I keep repeating myself. If I do, I'm sorry about it.
No, please look. This is important stuff. It needs to be hammered home because I would say that, I've said this many times when we're talking that we always have to keep an eye on Europe, not just because of the just the brotherhood, the sheer connection between the two prominent sides of the Atlantic when it comes to Western
Yeah.
society, but also because what you guys go through oftentimes is just a preview of what we're going to be going through in the future. So yes, repeat yourself over and over again. We've got to beat this drum because people need to be aware. There are huge privacy concerns. We've looked at what the EU is doing to spy on its own people, what the EU is doing to censor its own people, the
Yeah.
hypocrisy. This is not something that we're going to let go of at any point in the future until it's fixed. Are there any other? I mean, there's so much happening over there. I know that we just recently had an election. Um, if you want to talk about it, you don't have to. But was it Moldova? Um,
Yeah.
that's that's your call. You don't have to talk about it
No,
if you
I
don't
want to
want to.
talk about it 100%. I mean, I am very proud of the fact that I am Dutch. I love my country with all of my heart. I mean, I came to the Netherlands when I was 6 months. So and even though I was not born here, my mother instilled in me a deep, deep sense of patriotism. However, of course, I also have respect for the country of my ancestors, which is Moldova. Now, this is the thing coming from Europe. Having seen how a country that I deeply love falling into the hands of the globalist European Union, how they are seizing our freedoms, how they are gaining more and more control at the cost of our sovereignty, I know what the European Union truly is about. And this is why I'm so opponent to Moldova becoming a part of the European Union. But you would have to ask me a question because otherwise I will go on a rant and we'll have to do a whole other show. So, what do you want to know about it?
I wouldn't know what's
Because I
coming.
am
Like
deeply passionate about it. Give me a
I
go
I
and
can
I'll go.
tell. I can tell. Look, what is let's keep it very vague, very straightforward. What does the future
Okay.
hold? Is this going to be, and I hate to word it like this, but is this going to be the EU's next victim? Um,
Yeah.
and if it's too emotional,
Yeah.
you let me know. We can move on.
No, no, JD, you're completely right. It is definitely, definitely the next victim. And it's not just only the victim of the European Union. Look, They're promised all these fake promises that the European Union will improve their life. They will live in true democracy. Ha ha ha! What a joke. True freedoms. It will create prosperity. What it will actually create is for Moldova to become a dumping market for companies to just dump all of their products. The wages will go down. People will leave the country. As a result of that, there will be a massive brain drain. They will lose their sovereignty. And look at other countries that have entered the European Union before them. Bulgaria, Romania. It's the same fate. These countries are being destroyed as a result of entering the European Union. Now, what I do really want to address, and I think this is very important because not a lot of people know this, is that these elections wasn't just important for the European Union or for Soros, but it's also very important for another organization that you and I never elected. They're very undemocratic, and we know them as NATO. NATO has a deep interest in the country of Moldova. Why? Because there is a part of the country which is called Transnistria. It was annexed by the Russians in the 90s, and they still have some Russian militaries are still based at the border. For 30 years, that was not an issue. There never has been a further escalation of that conflict. I've even been to Transnistria, and I can tell you, you would be very disappointed with how little Russians there are because it's so sensationalized in the media, but it's not really reflecting the truth there. What I really think is a big problem is that NATO wants to seize control over Moldova because it is at the border with Ukraine and with Russia. And even if, for example, they will put guns there, weapons, or even station some troops, this can be seen by Russia as a sign of escalation. So they will retaliate, then Romania will step in, they will protect Moldova because Moldova is its little brother, and then voila, the rest of Europe is at war with Russia. And that is a terrible, terrible, terrible outcome that I hope will not happen. But it's very
Well,
likely
let's
to happen. I mean, 80% of the media is already paid by NATO and the EU and Soros. So we know they have a deep interest in that country. We can just only pray that, like I said, that I'm wrong.
I always viewed Moldova as a. I mean, it is such a strategic location. Not to mention the resources that are available there. There's a lot. It doesn't get nearly talked about nearly enough here in the United States. And I want to talk a little bit more about NATO, but I do want to talk about you first before we get to this that important last question. We have a growing, as I noted before, we have a growing interest in what's happening in the EU, just across the entire continent, and you have quickly emerged as the voice, the person to go to. I see you getting interviewed everywhere. It's amazing. I want you to tell people where to be able to find you and how they can find your work and what plans you have. And I know you don't like talking about yourself, but please, in this case, do.
Well, thank you very much for such beautiful words. And as always, like, I'm very grateful that you're giving me this opportunity to talk about these issues. Because, like you said, I can totally understand that when people sometimes read the headlines, they think, what is going on in Europe? These are some nuts people. And you know what? We're not, but our politicians definitely are. And I try to, inform people on that. So the best way you want to stay informed, that is on X at Scaroleva. I will spell that Scaroleva.
Perfect. All right, everybody, go pause, follow Scarlett over there, and then you won't have to hear me butcher her name again. So let's talk about NATO.
Yeah.
It seems as if there's a lot of talk the last week and a half since we've talked. There's been a lot of talk about how NATO may be trying to accelerate. That NATO is looking at either expecting something to pull them more directly into conflict with Russia or planning to engage themselves. What are you hearing on the ground as far as rumors, wars and rumors of wars? Do you guys are you concerned that NATO is going to do something, or that Russia is going to prompt them to do something? What's the big buzz surrounding NATO and a potential conflict with Russia in the future?
It's a very good question. So, Well, I think first and foremost, when we talk about NATO, as a Dutch citizen, it's almost impossible not to talk about the fact how Mark Rutte, who was our prime minister for 14 years, made some backdoor deals with NATO, and then magically he became the Secretary General. And the biggest problem is that there was only one politician who asked in Parliament to have clarification and for it to be publicized what was made during those backdoor deals. And his request was actually denied. So we have no clue the kind of power that NATO at this moment currently is holding over my country. I cannot speak for other countries. I know that this is the case in the Netherlands, but even in the Netherlands, I don't know how badly the situation is. Now, the other thing is that is undeniable is that we see that not only NATO but also the EU, it's almost like they really want to go at war. I mean, let's look at Germany. In Germany, they even changed the constitution shortly before the new Bundestag, which is their version of a parliament, was going to take place. With the new Bundestag, they would not have the two-third majority that you need in order to change the constitution. Now they changed it, which means that they can print endless money and they will use that budget, almost half a trillion, to build up their army again. This is terrible. This is not, we're not, if you really want to have peace, you're not going to build more weapons. It's like 1984. War is peace. This is what we're living in, and it's terrible. And also, like everywhere you go, they try to almost romanticize it, which I think is a very interesting development that I've seen in Europe. Is this, and I'm talking again from a Dutch perspective, they are now, the government is actually now using influencers that are applying for army. So that doesn't mean necessarily you will be sent to Ukraine, but you will be ready to send to Ukraine in case that would be necessary. And they glamorize it like it's something fun. Oh, I feel like such a girl boss. And it's infuriating me when you're in the trenches with your boots on the ground and you see your friends dying and you haven't showered in days, you haven't slept in days. You feel the smell of decaying bodies. There's nothing fun about that. And I'm truly worried because at the end of the day, nobody's talking about peace negotiations. And I'm not saying that Russia is doing a good job. I mean, Russia is constantly going over NATO airspaces where it shouldn't go. So both sides are escalating the whole situation. I want to be very nuanced in that perspective, but I do feel that Europe is going towards war. They want war at all costs, and a big thing that we can see is actually now at the Copenhagen EU summit that is currently taking place. What is this EU summit about? It is about basically more support to Ukraine. Now, again, today they had 4 billion extra money. You know that if the EU comes together to talk about Ukraine, always some billions will be donated to Ukraine. Interestingly, what this is a side thing, is that their amount of millionaires has also increased significantly since the start of the war. But I'm sure that there is not any correlation between these two things. Anyway, back to the topic. We have to talk the only sane person who is trying to prevent this war, which is, thank God, President Viktor Orban of Hungary.
Hmm.
He said, and I quote, Russia is at war, Ukraine is at war, Hungary is not. He's trying to actually use his veto to stop Ukraine from entering the European Union. What he's also saying is that this top is being used with pro-war proposals on the table. And it's true. Brussels wants to accelerate Ukraine accession. They want to put more money into the country, send more weapons, and even possibly troops. What is the European Union doing as a response to that? They now want to abolish the veto rights. The reason why there is a veto and why it's so crucial is so that member states can protect their own interests when Europe is trying to override those interests. This is one of them. Ukraine entering Europe is not of interest of Hungary, and frankly, it's not of interest of the Netherlands, it's not of interest of France, it's not of interest of Germany, it's of interest of Brussels alone. But this is how the European Union plays. Okay, we want to get something done. We cannot do it legally. Well, we find another way to do it. This is European Union in a nutshell. Now they want to get rid of the veto. And the worst part is the theater that comes with it. Because now, yesterday, they said in the newspapers that the Netherlands doesn't want to abolish the veto. And this is how the Netherlands always plays it, That they're so tough on the EU, but eventually they always give in. They just do it so they can get some approval from the public at home. It's it's um it's a public theater that we're witnessing. Europe is heading for war, and only Viktor Orban is trying to stop it. And I'm almost convinced that they will get the veto right to be abolished. They've been wanting to do that for a very, very, very long time. And if there's one thing that the EU does is to get its way, one way or another. Even if they cannot abolish the veto right, they will find another way to let the Ukraine enter European faster, accelerated.
We all need to pray for Viktor Orban and Europe across the board. There are monumental challenges,
I
we'll
met
say.
him. I met him when I was
Oh,
in
did you?
Hungary this summer. He's such a wonderful man, and I even told him that I wish that more leaders had a backbone like you, because at the end of the day, it must not be easy to be in his position. Imagine the cold welcoming he gets the moment he's entering those negotiations. Everyone is treating him horribly, but he doesn't bend. He doesn't bend. Just like he's still keeping the border closed, he even built a wall. He's paying 1 million for that wall. So illegal immigrants cannot enter the country, but that's a sacrifice he's willing to make. And I wish more leaders would follow his example.
I do too. And maybe there will be, we are seeing the awakening, I think, here in the United States. We're seeing a similar awakening there in Europe. People are starting to realize that if they don't act themselves, they can't trust their so-called leaders. There's just too much going on, and until you can replace leaders and get more people like Viktor Orban, I would say that the EU is heading in a horrible overall direction. By the time we talk next week, things I'm certain are going to be changing, but I can't wait to have that discussion. Scarlett Karoleva. Gosh, I'm just got to work on that. I'm going to just repeat it over and over again. My wife's going to be like, "Who's Scarlett Karoleva?" It'll be fun.
No, 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 no.
It'll be good. I will strive to do that. But let's get you back on next week. Any parting words?
JD, as always, I want to say thank you
Mm.
so
No,
much
thank you.
for giving me this opportunity. Um, You know what? I want to end, maybe I should make an item of it. Good news of the week, because I've
Yeah.
just only been negative. So the good news is I wanna applaud and give a shout out to the people of Britain for coming together, for getting those 2.5 million,
Million.
2.4, I think, or even more right now, signatures against the digital identity. You know what, dear people watching at home? At the end of the day, you and I together we are strong. Don't underestimate what we can do when we use our voices. Because if our voices wouldn't hold any power, they would not try to silence it. Don't forget
Right.
that.
No,
God bless
absolutely. Great
America.
message.
Wishing my Jewish friends a happy, blessed Yom Kippur, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Scarlett, talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
The insurance you need to protect your American dream. That's the tagline for my great friends over at America First Healthcare. You can find out more for yourself. You can reach them by going to patriot.tv/health, patriot.tv/health. Check them out, see what they offer, whether it's for health, for life, for business insurance. They do a fantastic job. But that's just me saying it. I would strongly encourage you to reach out to them through that link, talk to them, and see what they can do for you. Because look, we can say, "Oh, great, that's it's awesome. They're America First Company, and blah 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 blah. They have their shared values and all that. That's great, right? It really is. But is it better? I mean, we're not going to be getting worse coverage just because we can they might give us worse coverage, but by golly, they promote America. That's that's just not going to happen. We are practical people. My audience here at Patriot TV. But with that said, they claim, and I would encourage you to research it, but they claim that they actually have better coverage than what you get through the government controlled healthcare systems or even many of the private healthcare healthcare offerings out there. And more importantly, perhaps for some of you, more importantly, they offer better rates. With, according to their website, with thousands of insurance plans to choose from, it can feel overwhelming to find the right plan at the right price. At America First Healthcare, we take a holistic approach to make sure we find the best coverage for your exact needs. We get you better rates by helping you choose the right type and amount of coverage. Then we shop around for the best results. They can save you up to 20% on the coverage. Who couldn't use? I know we're most of us, the vast majority of us, are paying. I mean, compared to what we used to pay, my goodness, we're paying a lot. 20% right off the top. That would be a huge benefit. So reach out to my good friends over at America First Healthcare. Go to patriot.tv/health. Patriot.tv/health. The digital euro is on the move, and that should concern us here in the United States of America, despite all of the reassurances that there will be no digital dollar at any point in the near future. Well, I would say that if you read between the lines, they're definitely pushing for a digital dollar, even within the Trump administration, and not Donald Trump himself, but and even most of his higher ups are poo-pooing on the idea of a central bank digital currency, of a digital dollar. But behind the scenes, we get to see and hear rumors that it is already planned, in the works, could be integrated by 2030, that magical year that's coming up. And they're saying pretty much the same thing over in Europe. They're just saying it more openly. According to Gateway Hispanic, they say that the digital euro is on the move, and perhaps more importantly, Ursula von der Leyen, the chair of the European Commission, well, she's saying it as well. Watch.
The digital euro is on the move. Yesterday, the Governing Council of the ECB approved the opening of the preparation phase. It will be a journey, and we will walk the journey together with the legislator. All European institutions will be involved to make sure that Europe is equipped with the currency of the future. Cash is here to stay. You will have all options: cash and digital cash. So what does it mean for you? For consumers, it would be free and easy to use everywhere in the euro area. All of that, of course, is subject to the legislative process. Cash or digital, the choice will be yours. Your euro, your choice.
I don't know about you, but that sure had a familiar vibe. If you like your euro, you can keep your euro. Yeah, we've heard something similar to that here in the United States. According to the article, the digital euro project has taken a key step toward following the approval by the Governing Council of the European Central Bank to open the preparations phase. With this, the plan for a European digital currency ceases to be merely a concept and begins to materialize as a reality in the making. All European institutions will be involved in this process to ensure that Europe is equipped with the, quote, currency of the future. And that they want this future, again, oddly enough, coincidentally, if you believe in such things, pushing to have it all up and ready before 2030. This is going to happen. No matter what we say, no matter what President Trump says, no matter what any reassurances we get from various world leaders and economists and this, that, or the other, it's inevitable. And perhaps what makes it even worse, definitely makes it worse, but also makes it more likely to happen sooner rather than later, is the rise of artificial intelligence. The concerns that many of us have, and we've got tons of concerns, but one of those concerns is, of course, about security, hackable money. It's already hard enough to keep your wallet if you're walking around in New York City. What if they can just get into your bank account very easily through hacking? And you might say, well, they could do that today. And I would argue, no, that's very, very, very different. Okay, that's completely different from actually having a currency that is tied straight to a digital wallet. Anyone who's ever operated within the realm of cryptocurrency, you know that if you do lose access to parts or all of your digital wallet, chances of getting it back are pretty much nil. It doesn't matter that it was stolen. It doesn't matter that it's a crime, because the very nature of digital currencies, that's just hard to pry back, to claw back when it is stolen. But their solution, we can stop fraud. We can stop all these things. All we need is a little bit of artificial intelligence. Keep your eyes open on this one, folks. I'm not trying to be a fearmonger so early. I'm just telling you, this does feel inevitable. It seems as if it would take massive worldwide change. We're talking like catastrophic change, not just government change or new presidents or new prime ministers or whatever. It would take utter catastrophe for this to be halted. And God forbid that would happen, because if it is, that means we're in worse shape than we would be with the digital currency itself. One world economy, one world currency. It's on its way. And no, that's not just, crazy conspiracy theorists. Nope. It's happening in the real world, right in front of our eyes.
This is your wake-up call, pal.
All right, let's move on to China. China has been a thorn in our side for decades now. It is our greatest threat as a nation, bigger than Russia as a threat. Even before Russia had invaded, I would say China had already usurped Russia as being our biggest rival, biggest threat to U.S. exceptionalism, U.S. domination across the globe. They are the ones that have the masses of people. They have the huge military. And yes, unfortunately, both companies are very reliant on each other. We have a symbiotic relationship. They produce, we buy. We're the consumers, they are the makers, and that sucks. It really sucks for us, because it makes it to where we are far too beholden on them. Now, in a lot of industries, that can change rapidly, and it is changing rapidly thanks to President Trump's policies. But there are other areas, especially when it comes to rare earths and other imports that they can only export to us. That's where we're vulnerable, and that's why we have maintained a frenemy stance with them for a long time. Yes, we know that they do things. They steal our technology. They spy on us. They are probably embedded in so much technology here in just about every household in America in ways that we have no idea. They can do a lot of damage to us. Thankfully, we can do a lot of damage to them too, in different ways, and that's the only reason why I think neither has pulled the proverbial trigger. It's not just the nuclear aspect of it or the other military means. There are ways that both countries can do great damage to each other, and I don't like that. I don't know about you, but I'm not crazy about that, especially when you have the unhinged leadership of Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party calling the shots over there. But at the center of it all is Taiwan. Taiwan, we have pretty much nearly as much of a dependence upon them as we do on China, and arguably even more so when you look at the potential for technological advancements. They supply the semiconductors. They supply like 90% of the advanced chips that we use here in the United States. This little itty-bitty nation right off the coast of our biggest rival controls so much of what we can do. And when we're talking technology, I'm not just talking about, AI and quantum computers. I'm talking even basic technology like cars and advanced toasters, which, by the way, just on a side note, you probably shouldn't own any advanced toasters or advanced anything, especially if it has Chinese technology in it, because chances are it is in some way spying you or may spy on you in the future. Who knows? Maybe they could blow up or take over, become Skynet. Not a big fan. Don't want to sound paranoid, but I am. With that said, having so much of our technological prowess dependent upon a tiny little island that's right next to our mortal enemy just doesn't sit well with me. We do need to make a change there as quickly as possible. Not sure why. I have no idea why the leaders in technology and government and business and finance, for whatever reason, they thought, hell, let's park all of our technology here. Right next to a country that has declared that they want to take that country over. China wants Taiwan to be a complete and full and totally controlled member of their nation. They want one China. They don't want Taiwan to be independent at all. And they have the military to back it up, and they're right there. Why bugs me to death. Yes, I would love to have all of it here. I am not an isolationist per se, but I am somebody who wants the ability to be an isolationist if we wanted to be. In other words, I would love to outsource things based upon choice, based upon it making sense, based upon our just being benevolent, I guess is the easiest way to put it. I was about to say belligerent, that too. But no, I would love to be able to say, yeah, we outsource some stuff. But if that ever got cut off, no worries. We got it covered here at home. That's the country that I wish we had, and we are the only country that could possibly do that, at least a country of our size. No other country has the natural resources, the talent, the infrastructure that we could put together to become isolated if we ever had to be. And I would argue that we should strive towards that goal, not for the sake of isolation, but for the sake of not being beholden to anybody else, especially the Chinese Communist Party or Taiwan or South Korea or anyone. We've already seen the tremendous bloodshed that's taken place over the decades as a result of our dependence upon Middle East oil. Things are changing. We aren't nearly as dependent. The energy systems across the globe are changing, and the Middle East knows that. That's one of the reasons why so many things are changing over there as well. They realize that their black gravy train is going to run dry. Even if the oil itself doesn't run dry, the need for their oil is quickly dissipating. They know it. They're making changes. That's a discussion for another day. Back to China, though. The Daily Signal put together a pretty good analysis. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's not too long. It's a little dry, but the opening part of it does make a lot of sense. This is by Brent Sadler and Jory Hall over there at dailysignal.com. Countdown to 2027, which is apparently the magic number for China-Taiwan engagement. What Beijing's military moves say about China's intentions. Last year, the Department of War warned that China could be ready to invade Taiwan as early as 2027. Now, the People's Liberation Army is actively gauging rivals' military capabilities and updating its plans accordingly. Dum dum dum. For the Chinese military, using the enemy to train the troops, which is called, and I'm not going to pronounce this right, Nadi Langbang. I butchered it. I don't even know how it's supposed to be pronounced, and I could tell I butchered it. But that's okay. Is a deliberate strategy one China increasingly adopts towards Taiwan. China continues to pressure Taiwan with an increasing military presence in the island's exclusive economic zone and past the median line or midpoint between the two countries. In other words, incursions into what any sane nation would consider to be a line that you shouldn't cross. Unfortunately, the Chinese Communist Party is not a sane government over a sane nation. They are insane. And I'm not saying that just because they're our enemy. I'm saying that because they really kind of are. I mean, there's a little bit of true, legitimate insanity, at least how Western eyes would view it, in their government and the way they operate. Before the August 2022 trip to Taiwan by then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, the highly provocative midline crossings had only occurred a handful of times going back to the 90s. But since then, China has averaged just 10.9 median line crossings daily for 2022. Today, that average has increased to just under 13 per year. Weird. Over the past few years, research from the Heritage Foundation has shown rising trends of Chinese military activity and more comprehensive military exercises, typically peaking during the summer months, which makes a lot of sense. Now, we've seen the trend actually level out here. Since February, oddly enough, since President Trump has been in office for the second time. There's been a lot of peaks, a lot of valleys. They're in, they're out, they're aggressive, they're passive. But for whatever reason, I'm not saying that to be coy. I'm not sure why they have leveled out. It's not that they're not low, they're not high, they're right there in the middle, and staying pretty consistent really since February of this year as far as their incursions into Taiwan space, and it's been pretty level. And that I don't understand it. That's not. It's a different tactic for them. So I'm not sure what to make of it. I will say this though: any war that could be had between the United States and China, we would want it to be isolated to that region. Okay, and by region, I'm not talking about just the entire region of Southeast Asia. I'm talking about right around Taiwan. Would that suck if there was a conflict, a war between us and China over Taiwan? You betcha. I don't want it to happen. I wish that we could back out. but we can't. There are those that say, oh, it's none of our business. Unfortunately, because of the aforementioned stupid decisions that business and technology companies and our leaders have made over the decades, we have put too much of our technological infrastructure in the hands of Taiwan. We depend on them, this little tiny country that would be very difficult to defend if we had to, because we would have to defend it against a country that has all their infrastructure less than 100 miles away. They could wage a war. We have to cross the entire Pacific to get to it. It's insane. But that's where we are. So for those who say, well, it's none of our business, we wouldn't want to, we don't have a formal treaty. We just have a loose declaration of sort of a relationship that doesn't really, it's not binding. It's not I get it. Okay, I'm with you. If it wasn't, I hate to sound rude here, but if we weren't as dependent upon them for our technology, for our semiconductors, for our advanced chips, I would say, sorry guys, we really like you. No, sorry, we can't do anything about it. I know, it sounds awful, right? It's like abandoning our allies, but it's true. We don't have a formal military alliance with them. And yeah, so sorry if that offends some of you over there. Now, if they were to attack other nations, okay, now we're talking. Taiwan, we don't have a real relationship with them. It's implied at best. And that's not enough to put our troops in harm's way. There is a scenario that I'm going to play for you. I was actually hesitant because it's pretty long. It's almost 20 minutes, but it's worth it. It's interesting. I'm not going to endorse it by any means, but look, there are times when putting out information in a concise manner is better done in a more structured path than with a podcast. Look, I get the stories in, I get videos, I get it together, put my notes together, and then I just go. I talk. That's what I do. I'm not great at laying down like a documentary format, but thankfully the folks over at the Infographics show do. So even though it's 20 minutes, it's a worthwhile 20 minutes, and we'll discuss after that. I'm going to play that now.
What if the next World War was decided in just 2 days? With war between the US and China predicted for 2027, the Pacific is the gateway to global power. Whoever controls its waters commands trade, resources, and military dominance. For America, seizing it means acting first, swiftly and decisively, before any rival can respond. There is no prize for second place. On today's Infographic Show, we'll explore how the US could lock down the Pacific in 48 hours. The satellite images before the US president show the unthinkable. Almost 130 Chinese warships moving in perfect formation across the South China Sea. Yet no one is surprised. Militaries across the West have been wargaming this exact scenario for more than a decade. The Chinese fleet stretches for 30 miles. Carriers, destroyers, submarines, amphibious assault ships, and support vessels representing the largest naval deployment since World War II. Accompanying them are massive submarine drones and vessels capable of doubling as artificial harbors, and amphibious offloading stations. At the center of it all sits the crown jewel of the Chinese Navy ambition, the CNS Fujian, a supercarrier whose electromagnetic catapults can launch aircraft faster than anything the Chinese fleet has ever managed before. Every ship, worryingly, is on a crash course with Taiwan. But the imposing procession doesn't stop there. Within minutes, the president learns that the initial fleet is supported by a second wave of 200 landing craft, filled to the brim with an estimated 50,000 Marines. Predictably, the Chinese state media classifies this threatening naval foray as routine exercises. But the tonnage of military hardware bearing down on Taiwan represented more firepower than most nations possess in their entire military. The Chinese fleet moves with the confidence of a navy that has spent 20 years preparing for this moment. Type 55 destroyers form protective screens around the fleet, each one armed with 112 vertical launch cells, capable of firing missiles that can sink an aircraft carrier. Beneath the surface, submarines run silent, their exact positions known only to Chinese commanders. Shore-based missile batteries along China's coast come online, their radar sweeping approaches to the Taiwan Strait with methodical precision. American intelligence estimates give Taiwan 72 hours before Chinese forces achieve overwhelming victory. The island nation's military, though well-trained and highly motivated, simply cannot withstand the sheer weight of firepower approaching their shores. For decades, it was anyone's guess how the American military would respond to this exact scenario. Such doubts lingered no longer. For months, heated White House discussions motivated by an intelligence coup we will never know about had finally led to the abandonment of decades of strategic ambiguity on the Taiwan question. America's old policy of ambiguity was over. No more vague promises of support if Taiwan were ever attacked. The stakes were now undeniable. Taiwan produced over 60% of the world's semiconductors and 90% of its most advanced chips. Lose Taiwan, and virtually every computer, smartphone, car, and military drone stops being made. The global economy doesn't just take a hit, it goes back to the Stone Age, digitally speaking. The economic fallout of Taiwan's loss would make the 2008 financial crisis look like a minor accounting error. Supply chains that took decades to build would collapse overnight. The semiconductor supply chain, it turns out, makes America's oil dependence on the Middle East look quaint by comparison. America now faces a choice: watch China reshape the Pacific Order permanently while holding the global economy hostage, or respond with force that will either prevent a war or guarantee one. The President's order sets the U.S. Pacific Command into motion, a machine built for moments like this. At Pearl Harbor, Admiral Stephen Kohler receives his orders through encrypted channels. He stands in his war room surrounded by screens that pulse with the positions of every American asset, from the Aleutians to Australia. He was witnessing the activation of the world's most sophisticated naval command system. His staff has run this same scenario hundreds of times, but now things are different. Now things are real, and nobody, especially Kohler, is looking forward to finding out which part of the Navy's war games were overly optimistic. The USS Gerald R. Ford, already conducting routine patrols 800 miles northwest of Hawaii, receives new orders. Within minutes, her nuclear reactors surge to full power. Her escorts form protective screens. Her air wing prepares for round-the-clock operations that will continue for weeks. The carrier's electromagnetic aircraft launch system is even better than China's. It can put a fighter in the air every 30 seconds, a capability that'll prove crucial in the hours ahead. The USS Nimitz, steaming in the Philippine Sea, changes course without explanation to her crew. Her captain knows only that the sealed orders he's opening will either prevent a war or start one. Across the Pacific, 7 Los Angeles-class attack submarines receive coordinates and vanish beneath the waves. At Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, ground crews begin loading B-2 Spirit bombers with ordnance that, well, officially it doesn't exist. The Pacific begins to fill with American steel, moving with purpose that hasn't been seen since World War II. Within an hour, the pace of decision-making quickens. At 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time, the phone lines open up with America's Indo-Pacific allies. In Tokyo, the Japanese Prime Minister is interrupted at an official dinner to take a secure call that will define his nation's future. The conversation is brief, coded, and urgent. America's strategy hinges on access to Japan's bases. Similar calls reach Seoul, Manila, Canberra. The responses vary in tone but not in substance. Whatever America needs, America gets. This is alliance politics at its most raw. Decades of diplomatic relationships and security treaties are immediately converted into wartime logistics vehicles. For the United States, this means calling in virtually every favor it has ever been owed. And since their partners' very security hinges on the outcome, they're all too eager to hand over the keys to military bases and operational hemispheric command. The alliance network that has kept the Indo-Pacific stable for 7 decades suddenly transforms into something altogether more dangerous for China: a unified war machine. More problematically, it's one with the industrial capacity of 3 continents and the technological sophistication of the world's most advanced military powers. At Yokosuka Naval Base, Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force officers work alongside their American counterparts in an integration so seamless it appears rehearsed. And that is because it has been, countless times, in exercises that suddenly seem prophetic. Container ships loaded with fuel, ammunition, and spare parts begin moving toward predetermined positions. South Korean ports also eagerly open their arms to American destroyers and cruisers. There too, Korean crews work knowing full well that failure means catastrophe. Australia's Pine Gap, the most sophisticated intelligence facility in the Southern Hemisphere, transitions to full wartime operations. Its satellite dishes turn toward targets theoretical yesterday and existential today. The Great Pacific Logistics Marathon commences with an all-out sprint. C-17 Globemasters thunder out of Travis Air Force Base, packed with specialists who will transform Allied facilities into forward operating bases. These men have been well briefed. They understand the coming operations will dwarf Desert Storm. Marine Expeditionary Units begin loading into amphibious assault ships with the quiet efficiency of professionals who have trained for this moment their entire careers. The supply calculus that makes American power projection even possible unfolds in real time. In the family housing at Camp Pendleton, wives and children watch their Marines load into buses in pre-dawn darkness. Nobody mills about. There is purpose in their gait, and within minutes the buses are gone for Pacific assignments unknown. On America's nuclear submarines, crew members settle into routines they know could last months. For everyone gearing up for deployment, things still feel so surreal, it barely registers that so few of them might actually come back. At 0800 Eastern, Cyber Command unleashes a series of operations that exist in a realm beyond conventional warfare. Enemy communication networks suffer cascading failures. To most, they look random, but to the mathematicians and computer scientists fighting through fiber optic cables, the patterns are unmistakable. Vicious programs designed for this era are unleashed on the enemy. Chinese military satellites find their uplinks jammed by signals so sophisticated they appear to be equipment malfunctions. GPS satellites receive new programming that will selectively deny service to hostile forces while maintaining precision guidance for American weapons. In geosynchronous orbit, Space Force assets begin a strategic program of electronic warfare operations that blind enemy surveillance systems while enhancing American capabilities. The battlefield no longer encompasses only land, sea, and air. For years, nations feared what would happen when it expanded from the ocean's depths to orbital heights, when weapons and algorithms could cripple a military without a single shot fired. Now it was time to find out. Reconnaissance satellites reposition themselves with tiny thruster burns that require months of orbital mechanics calculations. The intelligence advantages, however, can be worth billions of dollars. Chinese radar installations begin malfunctioning in ways their operators cannot explain. Most scramble to restore sensitivity to sensor arrays and curtail the glitches cascading through previously secure networks. The Chinese military did not anticipate such a stark response. Their commanders are infuriated as the fog of war descends in a manner that borders on science fiction. Global Hawk drones launch from Andersen Air Force Base on Guam. Their 30-hour missions will map every vessel, every installation, every movement across millions of square miles of ocean. AWACS aircraft establish aerial command posts that can interweave live drone feeds across time zones while remaining beyond the reach of enemy interceptors. America's Pacific Naval Intelligence stations process waterfalls of data that would have melted the supercomputers of old. There are electronic fingerprints arcing across the Pacific. Each radar signature, radio chatter, and unique sound of a ship's engines are cataloged, analyzed, and fed into targeting databases. Today, the introduction of AI helps them grow smarter by the hour. At 1200 Eastern, fast attack submarines take positions that transform the geography of maritime warfare. The USS Hawaii settles into the deep waters north of the Strait of Malacca, her sonar array detecting every vessel that passes through the world's most important shipping lane. The USS Virginia positions herself at the southern entrance to the South China Sea, effectively controlling access to ports that handle a third of global trade. Down in the Philippine Sea, U.S. destroyer squadrons establish predetermined patrol zones, their Aegis radar systems creating an invisible dome that extends from Japan to the equator. Their actions are reinforced by a simple dictum: control the shipping lanes, control the world's supply chains. This is the heart of America's choke point strategy in the Pacific. Every major shipping route that connects Asia to the world's economy now passes through waters controlled by American submarines, destroyers, or aircraft. Container ships receive polite but firm recommendations about route selection. Oil tankers request naval escorts through waters that were international yesterday but feel increasingly American today. Still, China's true prize isn't in those sea lanes. It's Taiwan, and the U.S. military knows it. Marine Expeditionary Units launch from Okinawa in amphibious assault ships. Their destination is the Ryukyu Islands chain. It stretches from Japan toward Taiwan, Miyako Island, Ishigaki, and tiny coral outposts like Yonaguni that sit under 70 miles from Taiwan's coast. These islands have been handpicked as the first step in America's Pacific surge. They are geographic choke points through which any Chinese fleet must pass to reach the open Pacific. Every Marine, their commanders especially, know it's a risk. They will be landing within range of Chinese missiles. Some of the target islands are closer to mainland China than they are to Tokyo, but that is exactly why they matter. Control Miyako and Ishigaki, and you control the shipping lanes that carry more than $3 trillion in trade annually. Chinese submarines trying to reach the Pacific will have to surface in waters now crawling with American sensors. The amphibious operations have been choreographed under the assumption that Chinese ballistic missiles will attempt to turn the performance into a tragedy. Speed is of the essence. Marines storm the beaches of Yonaguni Island, population just 1,700. Within hours, Japan's westernmost territory is transformed into a forward missile base, ready to sink any Chinese warship attempting to push through the Taiwan Strait. On Ishigaki Island, prefabricated air traffic control towers arrive by helicopter, while Patriot missile batteries set up defensive perimeters. Fuel bladders are positioned to support fighter operations, while communications equipment establishes satellite links that connect these tiny outposts to global command networks. The image of American soldiers turning Japanese islands into forward bases to contain the Chinese Navy would have horrified all three nations 80 years ago. As the 24-hour mark approaches, F-22 Raptors begin patrols along the edge of Chinese airspace. Their stealth capabilities provide actionable intelligence while staying just out of range of China's increasingly nervous surface-to-air missile operators. F-35 Lightning IIs operate from bases spanning 3 continents, from Kadena Air Base in Japan to Darwin in Australia. They are far from alone. The skies above the Pacific are now chock full of American aircraft operating in coordinated patterns. But everyone knows the real question. Will China tolerate American air power on islands in its own backyard? Or will this spiral into the shooting war the world is desperate to avoid? Beneath the waves, Virginia-class attack submarines form hunter-killer groups that patrol approaches to Chinese naval bases at Qingdao and Sanya. Ohio-class guided missile submarines each carry 154 Tomahawk missiles, and these were positioned for strikes that could cripple Chinese infrastructure within hours. The ocean depths are now dominated by American technology and training that makes Chinese submarine commanders think twice about leaving port. At the 36-hour mark, another set of B-2 Spirit bombers launched from Whiteman Air Force Base on a 30-hour round trip. That proves American reach extends literally anywhere on the planet. Their targets are carefully selected for maximum psychological impact. Woody Island's radar installation will become expensive scrap metal. Communication towers on Fiery Cross Reef will go dark. Subi Reef's runway will develop several inconvenient craters. But it's not just the bombers that make Beijing's war planners sweat. It's the math. Chinese intelligence watches American assets flood the Pacific. Their 127-ship invasion fleet now faces 3 carrier strike groups, 47 attack submarines, and air bases spread across 6 countries. Every simulation their computers run produces the same results: tactical defeat within 72 hours, strategic humiliation for generations. The Chinese leadership faces a choice between losing face and losing their navy. Their fleet is not far off now. Are they in too deep? Can they turn back and still save face? In the Zhongnanhai compound, President Xi's military advisors present him with casualty projections. They make the Korean War look like a minor skirmish. American submarines have positioned themselves along every escape route from the Taiwan Strait. The DF-21 carrier-killer missiles that China spent billions developing over a series of decades suddenly seem inadequate, especially when faced with integrated missile defense systems stretching from Japan to Australia. More devastating than American military power is the economic calculation. Lloyd's of London announces it'll no longer insure vessels transiting disputed waters. Asian stock markets plummet as investors realize a shooting war means supply chain collapse. Samsung warns its chip production could halt within days. The global economy that China depends on for its prosperity starts shutting down before the first shot is fired. Xi long feared this inevitability. He had just hoped the West might blink rather than bear down. The turning point comes when Japan announces it's activating Article 9 provisions allowing collective self-defense. The clause's constitutional language seemed theoretical until American F-35 started operating from Japanese bases. The U.S. 7th Fleet came to South Korea's ports. Australia moved 3 Collins-class submarines to forward positions. The alliance network China thought it could divide suddenly looks more unified than ever. Xi thought back to 2022, to the West in the aftermath of Russia's ill-planned invasion. He had decades to plan, and even now the outcome looked increasingly untenable. At hour 42, something unprecedented happens. The Chinese fleet stops dead in the water. Satellite imagery shows the massive formation holding position 200 miles from Taiwan, neither advancing nor retreating. In Beijing, frantic messages fly between the Central Military Commission and fleet commanders. They know the truth. Against America's technological edge, victory is impossible and retreat is inevitable. The face-saving formula comes through diplomatic channels in Moscow. Ironically, it is Russia that offers to mediate the de-escalation talks that allowed China to frame its withdrawal as a successful completion of maritime exercises. Chinese state media begins referring to the operation as a demonstration of naval capabilities rather than invasion preparations. The 127-ship fleet that looked so menacing 48 hours ago starts dispersing into smaller groups, conducting routine patrols throughout the South China Sea. But everyone understands what really happened. China blinked. Shipping giants like Maersk and COSCO make polite phone calls requesting permission for routes that were unrestricted 48 hours earlier. Container ships get Navy destroyer escorts. Oil tankers adjust schedules based on U.S. patrol patterns. Communication networks operate under enhanced security protocols. Bureaucratic speak for "we're all reading your emails." Chinese commanders find themselves isolated from their own command structures, while American forces share information across service and time zones. The final 6 hours transform a military demonstration into a new economic reality. Insurance companies begin requiring U.S. Navy escorts for passage through the South China Sea. Shipping routes that carried trillions in annual trade now operate according to schedules coordinated through Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam. The global economy adapts to American naval supremacy with the efficiency of markets responding to new realities. Chinese diplomats fume about freedom of navigation, China's right to defend its own territory, and American imperialistic aggression. By hour 48, military order reigns across the Indo-Pacific. American submarines patrol choke points from the Straits of Malacca to the Miyako Gap, also known as the Kerama Gap. F-35s maintain combat air patrols over shipping lanes that stretch from Singapore to San Francisco. The islands that were dots on maps yesterday now host radar systems that can track aircraft at unimaginable distances. Chinese leadership faces a humiliating truth. They spent 2 decades building a world-class navy that cannot safely operate beyond their own territorial waters when America decides otherwise. The Taiwan invasion that was supposed to announce China's arrival as a global superpower instead demonstrates the limits of regional power when faced with global reach. America's Pacific strategy rests on a single principle: strike with overwhelming force, precise enough to spare lives, yet brutal enough to break the enemy's will. The demonstration works because it revealed technological and logistical capabilities that make Chinese victory mathematically impossible. When faced with certain defeat, even authoritarian regimes choose strategic patience over inevitable destruction. America may be able to dominate the Pacific quickly, but the real question is whether Taiwan could withstand the attack.
All right, I know what you're thinking. You're like, wow, that's a whole lot of everything going right and a whole lot of nothing going wrong for that scenario to play out exactly like that. And you're absolutely right. And I know that. I'm not trying to sell anybody any hopium. I just know that I don't want to go to war with China. I don't want to have to defend Taiwan. I wish we weren't as beholden to either Taiwan or China in any regard. And I think we need to acknowledge that if there was ever an opportunity for us to pull away our dependency on any other nations, now's the time. With President Trump in the White House, with all of these conflicts, wars and rumors of wars popping up, maybe we'll finally get the wake-up call that we need that says, hey, maybe we should be taking care of our own as much as possible instead of worrying about taking care of everybody else. I'm not saying we turn our back on Taiwan. I'm just saying I wish we had that option. It seems as if, as of right now, we do not.
It's the smell.
I'm very hopeful that I've made it crystal clear over the months, over the years, that I am not a fan of pharmaceuticals. With that said, I do understand and I appreciate there are times when we need access to certain drugs. Maybe you have a chronic ailment and you haven't been able to find a natural solution to treat or even cure your ailment. What about antibiotics? Am I against antibiotics? No. Praise God, I haven't had to use any for a very long time. We were trying to figure it out. We were able to trace it back. I think it's 2011, the last time I had to take an antibiotic of any sort. So yeah, awesome. Praise God for that. There are those that like to use antibacterial. No, sorry. What are they called? Antiparasitics, right? Like ivermectin. And look, I got no problem with that. I actually would encourage those who want to take ivermectin for various reasons, do so. I'm more against big pharma's control over American lifestyles. That's what I'm really fully against. I'm not saying don't ever take medicines. Every single one of them is bad, right? I don't take many, but then again, I do have members of my family who do take them, who take them on a daily basis. But what happens if you can't get the meds that you need? What happens if the supply chain breaks down, if there's war in Taiwan and we get involved and China cuts off our pharmaceutical ingredients? There are a lot of things that could happen. And that's why I am very, very blessed to be partnered with my good friends over at Jace Medical. You can go to patriot.tv/meds, patriot.tv/meds, and you can stock up on all kinds of pharmaceuticals. That way you're not beholden to big pharma, big government. Well, it wouldn't be a geopolitical episode, a foreign affairs episode, if I didn't talk about the Middle East. Of course, the big news out of the Middle East right now is the proposed peace plan from President Trump, which is apparently getting rejected by Hamas. Seems as if most others are embracing it, accepting it. Israel is. Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, has accepted it with certain. He's not happy about it. A lot of people in Israel aren't happy about it, especially the fact that it calls for all Israeli forces to leave Gaza. That's something that I don't think will happen. Even if Hamas signs the agreement, which it doesn't look like they will, even if they offer some amendments, Israel's going to come back and say, yeah, we can't leave completely. That would just be suicidal. It's just going to be a repeat of what happened October 7th, 2 years ago. But with the 2-year deadline anniversary coming up here in 4 days, it is a hot topic, and President Trump wants to get a deal done before then. He is not authorized. He said that he would call on and allow Israel to go finish the job, as he puts it, if Hamas does not sign the deal, and it looks like they're not going to. According to article over at the National Pulse, Hamas military chief opposes Trump's peace plan. The head of Hamas's military wing in Gaza, Al-Din al-Haddad, has reportedly rejected the 20-point peace plan proposed by President Trump. The proposal, which Israel has endorsed, aims to end the ongoing conflict in Gaza through measures such as disarmament, the release of hostages, and the establishment of a Palestinian transitional government. One that does not include Hamas, by the way. Trump issued a deadline of 3 to 4 days for Hamas to accept the plan, warning of a very sad end if the group refuses. The plan includes provisions for large-scale aid to Gaza, the release of Palestinian prisoners, and the withdrawal of Israeli forces, but it requires Hamas to relinquish its control of the territory. And all of those, literally all of them, are non-starters for the most part from either the Hamas perspective or the Israel perspective. Okay, there's going to have to be some nuance in all of it. Like, for example, the large-scale aid to Gaza. Who would coordinate that? If that's going to have to go through Israel, then Hamas, and nor will the Palestinians accept it. It would almost certainly have to go through Egypt, and Egypt might not. Egypt would have to be very nicely compensated for that to happen. I'm not saying that it wouldn't happen. I'm just saying that it's not as easy as, the aid's gonna come in. That's not how it works. Not in a place like Gaza. You have to have somebody who's taking responsibility for the distribution. Right now, that's Hamas, and that's why nobody's getting any of the aid. That's, oh my gosh, they're getting starved. Okay, well, look at the aid that's being stolen by Hamas, not given to the people. And then you've got the other aspect of it is the release of the Palestinian prisoners. It should be across the board, dead, alive, every single Palestinian or every single Israeli prisoner, no matter what, needs to be given over. Hamas has been reluctant. They always say that once we give over the last one, then it's over. That's the only leverage they have, and that I'm telling you, it pisses me off that they say that. It really does, because it's like the entire world. I don't care what your stance is. You're an anti-Zionist, pro-Zionist. You're one of those back Israel first, or if you hate Israel, whatever. Just the sheer fact that the geopolitics is pointing to rewarding Hamas, rewarding the people of Gaza, rewarding the Palestinians with a two-state solution based upon a terrorist action. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. They're saying, oh, we need a two-state solution because otherwise, Hamas might decide that they're going to go murder 1,200 and kidnap 250 people again. We don't want we've got to appease the terrorist so they don't terrorize anymore. That pisses me off. Sorry, I don't care what you think about oh, it's Israel's fault, it's open air, whatever. They committed an act of terrorism. And I guarantee you, for all of you people out there, they're like, well, but the response has been bad. I guarantee you, if it was your daughter who was being held for 2 years, raped multiple times a day, every day, that you wouldn't be like, well, let's just pull back a little bit and let's just see how it plays out. It's just one girl, 20 people. No, you wouldn't be like that. So don't give me this whole two-state solution wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. And it blows my mind that people don't see it. I don't look again. I'm not even just talking about people that whether you like Israel, hate Israel, anywhere in between. Just logistically speaking, the people that we're talking about in this scenario within an area the size of New Jersey, and you want to split it between people that hate each other, people that on one side have been known to engage in the most hideous possible forms of terrorism, torture, a people that goes completely against Western values and are like, well, wow, hey, they committed terrorism, let's give them land. Let's legitimize their actions. It's stupid. It just whatever. Sorry. I'm not sorry. Let's keep going, though. Let's see what else. Oh, withdrawal of Israeli forces again, not going to happen. No way. No way that Netanyahu or any leader that wants to remain leader in Israel would ever completely withdraw Israeli forces, not after what happened on October 7th. It's just not, that wouldn't happen. They might greatly reduce it. They might not go out there and bomb places and whatever, but they're not going to leave. That's insane. And I'm pretty sure Netanyahu even said as much. And it requires Hamas to relinquish its control over the territory, which I don't think they would willingly do. There needs to be an exit plan for Hamas. The only way that there can be peace is if there is an exit plan for Hamas members and anyone else who wants to go with Hamas. Okay? You want a two-state solution? Fine. Go buy a 40 by 40 mile tract of land in Saudi Arabia and build them their own little city or something. I don't know. But I mean, give them an exit that doesn't end with their deaths or whatever, and then I can see it happening. Otherwise, of course, what do they? No, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. This is all going to end very, very poorly. If it ends at all, I think it's just going to keep persisting, and that bugs me the most because, not to sound callous here, but I don't care enough about the region or any other region outside of the United States. We have our own problems here. I don't want this to be the center of our attention at all times, and it seems to be that's the case. I'm supportive of our allies everywhere in the world, but I don't want them. I don't care enough about them to be the news of the day every day. Bugs me to death. We got our own problems. Let's deal with those first. And last. Let's just deal with their, let them do their thing. You know what? I'm going to get myself in. If I keep talking, I'm going to get in trouble because I know that my ideas on this are not popular with any side of the issue. So let's go to who is it? CBN. CBN has their perspective from a news-ish, I guess. Well, there's not all news. There's bias here, but they have a perspective that's they're going to save me. Just watch this instead.
End game. This week, President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu unveiled a 20-point peace plan for Gaza. It put Hamas on notice. Embrace peace, release the remaining hostages, or face your ultimate demise. Here to provide some insights on the plan and the prospects for peace is Jewish News Syndicate Editor-in-Chief Jonathan Tobin. Jonathan, you've had some time to digest this peace plan, so how is it different than what we've seen before?
Well, the difference in this plan is not so much, the assumptions that, underlie some of the details, but the fact that President Trump has promised that if Hamas doesn't accept peace, if it doesn't release the hostages, disarm, leave Gaza, turn it over to an international authority, that he will give a green light to Israel to finish Hamas off. That's the difference. In the past, we've had lots of peace plans with lots of theoretical ideas about peace that all sounded good. Indeed, the assumptions behind this current plan all sound good. It just takes a tremendous leap of faith to believe that the Palestinians have had or are willing to change their political culture and embrace peace. But the difference now is that the United States is, adding the or else, which is why it's Trump is being criticized by many on the left. They don't like it, the fact that Hamas isn't being given leeway. They don't like the fact that Hamas is being told, take it or else. But that is the difference here. A lot of the other details in it, in some ways seems like a repeat of past efforts to make peace. The assumption that pouring more aid into Gaza and trusting that there is some kind of, I would say, mythical group of Palestinian technocrats who are apolitical and have no interest in destroying Israel. All of those assumptions, they're basically fairy tales, which would be nice if it all came true. But the difference, again, is this time the United States means business, or at least it says it means business, and that is to the good.
And the proposal unveils a positive vision for the future of Gaza. Arab countries and Europeans were involved and reportedly gave it their approval. So how significant is that, their involvement?
It is good in theory. The trouble is we've had, you said it before, we've had other peace plans in the past, go back to the Oslo Accords in 1993 and all of the peace processing of the last 30 plus years, they all sounded good. But they were all based on this assumption that the Palestinians actually wanted peace. The former Israeli foreign minister, Abba Eban, the late Abba Eban, famously said, the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And that was very witty. And it was true in that the Palestinians turned down innumerable opportunities for peace dating back to 1947, when the fledgling United Nations offered them an Arab state next to a Jewish state. They've been turning down peace plans all along. But the thing is, they didn't see those as opportunities because they were never interested in peace with a Jewish state, no matter where its borders were drawn. They wanted no Jewish state at all. Their definition of peace is no Jews in what is the land of Israel. Most of the Palestinians are still saying that. That's what Hamas believes. Frankly, it's what the so-called moderates of the Palestinian Authority, who are being told they must reform in Trump's plan, they're not to be trusted on this issue either. Again, the difference is Trump has put teeth in this plan, unlike every other, unlike, say, President Clinton, who also had a nice vision for peace, but when the Palestinians refused to make peace and violated the terms of the Oslo Accords, he turned a blind eye. Trump is saying he won't do that.
Well, an international stabilization force will be established, with Jordan and Egypt training Palestinian police and security personnel. How can Israel be guaranteed those trained will not target Israel again? Can a leopard change its spots?
It can't really be guaranteed. Let's be honest here, and that's that's what I say when there's a lot of elements in this that require enormous leaps of faith. This has been tried before. The Palestinian Authority police were trained by the United States. Forget about Egypt and Jordan. We had U.S. generals, in Judea and Samaria and Gaza, trying to train Palestinian police. And instead, they turned on Israel during the Second Intifada and waged war on Israel. So, no, of course, Israel can't trust to that. But Israel isn't really trusting to that. Israel is not going to relinquish. It's not going to lower its guard the way it did in the past. It's not going to withdraw from Gaza to let Hamas take it back over, or let some new armed force, which can't be trusted, take it back over, only when they see that President Trump's terms are being obeyed and to the letter, on in terms of Hamas disarming, Hamas giving up control, and a genuine peaceful, government of some sort of administration put in there, will Israel withdraw, and not before that. And that is clear. Prime Minister Netanyahu bent way over backwards to say yes to this plan from his friend President Trump. He even had to apologize to Qatar for going after Hamas terrorists in Qatar, who are hosted there, who fund Hamas, who fund the Muslim Brotherhood, and whom unfortunately President Trump and his administration treats as a reliable ally. Netanyahu went a long way to say yes to this, but he's counting on President Trump to keep his word that if Hamas doesn't do as Trump and his decency requires, to release the hostages, to lay down their arms, end this war, which never should have happened, then Israel will not give up another inch of Gaza.
Okay, we'll see what happens here. Jonathan Tobin, Jewish News Syndicate Editor-in-Chief. Thank you, Jonathan. We appreciate it for you being with us and sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Well, like I said, as a foreign policy, a geopolitical episode, it was necessary to bring up. But again, this is until we get into full-blown end times prophecies, I don't really look too much to the Middle East at all. Now, once it starts, and then all eyes are going to be on the Middle East, including mine. But right now, it's a regional skirmish based upon a horrific terrorist attack that turned into a war. There's too much bloodshed, too much attention, too much everything. Release the hostages, get this over with, get Hamas out of there. That's the solution, and it may be the only solution, because a two-state solution wouldn't work. It just can't. And Israel just withdraws and pretends like nothing happened and lets Hamas continue and lets the hostages rot. That's not going to happen either. That wouldn't work either. So I'm hoping that, and prayerful, that President Trump is able to do something, or anybody. I don't care if it's President Trump. Somebody do something. Fix it. Bring the hostages home. Get Hamas out of there. That's the solution. You can be pro-Israel, anti-Israel all you want, but at the end of the day, for the people of Gaza, for the people of Israel, for the people of the Middle East, the only way forward is for every hostage to either be released or their body released, dead or alive, every hostage accounted for, and for Hamas to no longer exist, at least not in Gaza. That's it. So I know. Hate mail. Send it over to go to jdrucker.com/talk, and you can send all your hate mail directly to me. Thanks.
Damn!
Clearly, there are many reasons for us to be very concerned about our health, or at least acutely aware of what's happening out there. It seems as if the medical industrial complex is bent on making us sick, keeping us plugged in to whatever they have going at any particular moment. I don't want to sound like a fearmonger here, but whether or not you've had the COVID jab, whether you've had COVID itself, whether you're just simply concerned about potential future, pandemics or whatever you'd like to call them, it may behoove you to check out our good friends over at the Wellness Company. You can go to patriot.tv/TWC for the Wellness Company. That's patriot.tv/TWC. Be sure to use promo code JDR. You'll get a nice discount there. And just check it out. See what they've got. They've got med kits. They've got supplements. You can get ivermectin in various forms. They've even got ivermectin that you rub it on your skin. I've never tried it. I'm more of the standard ivermectin guy, but hey, they got it all. They've got Ultimate Spike Detox, appetite stuff. They've even got like beef and coffee and mushrooms. They are expanding greatly, and I'm very appreciative of everything they're doing over at the Wellness Company. So be sure to check them out. Go to patriot.tv/TWC. Use promo code JDR, and get healthy. Stay healthy. Be healthy. All right, so outside of the peace agreement, I don't think that I can walk away from the discussion without the discussion of Israel without expressing a perspective, because I said, look, I'll pay more attention once it's clear that we are distinctly in the end times. Some would say that we are, and I would say that it certainly seems like we are. So let's talk about it. I forgot the guy's name. I think it's I'm familiar with him actually. I think it's Raslin KD or something like that. I need to look into him because his views. He's a former atheist, relatively new to the faith, but has been really trying hard to get an understanding. And he was recently on with Sean Ryan, and they discussed it, and it was a good discussion. I'm going to play it for you here in a second, at least that segment of it. But I think it's important to understand. I'm just going to give an overview because there will come a time when I'm going to give a more detailed explanation of how I feel, but I think it's important to give an overview at the very least for right now. And it's funny because it really does sort of align with what the discussion you're about to have. I say sort of because I think they're close. They're getting there. But my perspective is this, is that if you do believe that God is immutable, which he is, then that means that you cannot, there's no backtracking of, oh, well, Israel was God's chosen people and now they're not. They always are. The Israelis, the Hebrews, the Jews, whatever you want to call them, they are God's chosen people. But I think where a lot of times, especially dispensationalists, but Christians in general, often confuse that with salvation, and it's not. Okay, they can be, and they are still the vessel through which God is able to communicate in many ways with the world. What happens to the Jews is indicative of every time period throughout history. Okay, through ever since the Exodus. Okay, you can really start technically in Genesis, but we'll keep it simple for now and start with the Exodus. From that point on, the way that God interacted with the Jews through punishment, through blessing, punishment, blessing. They did right, they did well. They got rewarded. They did wrong. They got punished. It's this up and down, ebb and flow has been happening ever since. Okay, they are still God's people, but that does not mean that they're going to heaven. I think that those who haven't read the Old Testament, which I have, those who have not read the Old Testament, maybe not realize that being God's people does not mean that they're not going to hell as individuals. They still have to embrace and believe in Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. And the Bible does talk about a time, assumed in the near future, at least I hope, where they will come around. And we're already seeing many already are. And it's not just Jews. We're seeing Muslims, Hindus, atheists, people coming around to the faith. It does seem to be an awakening that we've talked about many times on my show. Right? But, and here's the big but, you can have both things be true. In other words, that to get salvation, to get everlasting life, to go to heaven, doesn't require any actions, doesn't require that you get circumcised or that you get anything. It just requires that you embrace Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Unequivocally. That's it. We don't have to, we can't earn our way in. You can be Jewish or Christian or whatever, and you can do all these great works, but that's not going to get you in. There's a difference between being God's chosen people, which the Jews are, and being saved, which the Christians are. Does that mean that the Jews can't be saved? No, they can. Same way that anybody can be saved. But I think where a lot of the hatred towards Jews comes in because it's like, oh no, they've been replaced. They're the old covenant. Again, you have to believe in an immutable God. God didn't make a mistake with the Jews. He didn't correct that mistake with Jesus and the cross. That wasn't him correcting anything. That was him going through and with our very limited understanding of time, the creator of the universe, as a man, sacrificed himself to become God, which he always was the entire time. Now we're getting into other theological concepts. But yeah, that's all true. And yes, it's true that the Jews are God's people. And yes, it's true that even God's people individually can go to hell if they don't embrace the salvation that's been given to them freely, at least to us, given to all of us freely. So when people say, oh, but they can't be God's chosen people if they don't believe in Jesus Christ, no, they can still be God's chosen people. They just don't necessarily get salvation until they embrace Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. I hope that doesn't confuse the issue much more. And again, I will go into a lot more detail. And I'm sure, again, you can always hit me up with your opinions. Agree, disagree, jdrucker.com/talk. Let's go to Sean Ryan. And again, I believe his name is Ruslan KD is his account. I don't know much about him. I'm obviously going to learn more about him now that I have seen his opinion, which is, it's getting there. It's, like I said, compared to mine, it's pretty close. So here we go.
I think it did. I called a really good friend of mine, Congressman Eli Crane, about a lot of the stuff that's going on in Israel right now. And, and I had a conversation with him about, I'm not interested in what people think. I'm interested in what the scriptures say. And I'm confused by a lot of the scriptures. And he had brought up, I believe it's Ezekiel 38:39 several times to me. Read it, didn't really understand it. I don't know if he's talking about at the time or this is going to happen in the future, but it basically says that all the nations will rise against Israel. We see a lot of that happening right now. I am not happy with what's going on over there at all. October 7th was horrible. Gaza looks like a dumpster. 60,000 people killed. That's several months old, probably a lot more now. Bomb Catholic churches in Libya, in Gaza, rumors of one in Syria. I mean, I'm not happy with what's going on over there. But, at the same time, when we see the rise against Israel, and it's, once again, it's everywhere in my feed. You click on one thing, you want to hear what somebody says, the next thing you know, that's your entire feed. And it is in every comment section, doesn't matter what the post is, everything, there are people out there that claim everything is Israel's fault. In Ezekiel 38:39, it talks about these, I think it's 12 nations that rise up against Israel. That's where the Antichrist will come from. And so, I'm curious about what are your thoughts on this?
So you're right in that Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and Daniel are being written at the same time. They're all contemporaries of each other. And they're being written to and about the children of Israel who are exiled in Babylon. So that's the backdrop of those three books. And so it's very wild stuff, right? Now, Babylon was the enemy, and they were held captive, taken out of the land. And in those books, there's apocalyptic stuff in all of them. Daniel has some really wild stuff about the Son of Man. He's coming back, and there's all kinds of really cryptic stuff in there that is prophetic, but it's also serving two purposes. It's also speaking about stuff that's happening there now, right? And so my thoughts on all of it, man, is I think October 7th was awful. I love Israel. I love the people of Israel. But on the night that happened, and I got in a lot of trouble for this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. On the night that happened, I said, man, this October 7th is so bad. I said, but I'm nervous because the IDF can be heavy-handed with how they respond. And I got torched by the Christians. What do you mean? You're a Christian. How dare you say the IDF can be heavy-handed? And I just got back from Israel less than a year ago. And we landed the day Benjamin Netanyahu got reelected. And it was tense because they don't have a two-party system. He had to connect with the far right, the ultra-Orthodox folks, to build a coalition. And they don't have a two-party system. There's multiple parties. So he already wasn't popular. And you align yourself with the far right in Israel. I'm not sure how much you know about the far right in Israel. It's a lot of the ultra-Orthodox. They don't work. They don't serve in the military. They just read Torah and pray all day. And that's their service to Israel. Everyone else in Israel has to serve 2 years in the IDF. So they're already not, the coalition he made was already not popular. And I could sense it. And I got friends in there in Israel that are Armenian. I got friends in Israel that are Christian. I got friends in Israel that are Palestinian. I'm hearing all of their different takes. Some folks that love Israel that are Palestinian, some folks that dislike Israel that are Palestinian. And so back then it was clear as day that, something's about to go down. There was a weight to there. And they were trying to explain all this to me. And I'm just I don't understand Israeli politics, right? But what we're seeing, I think, is the overflow of a government that is heavy-handed. And they also have the backdrop of the Holocaust over their legacy. So it's never again, we're going scorched earth. Mm-hmm. And it's wait a minute, there's churches. We're going scorched earth. wait a minute, they're civilians. We're going scorched earth. Now, if I give them the benefit of the doubt, are they intentionally blowing up churches? Are they intentionally blowing up civilians? Are they intentionally bringing harm? I really would like to say no. I would like to believe they aren't. I would like to believe there's more checks and balances in place. Do they have a right to defend themselves? Yes. Do they need to clean it up and fix it? Yes. You guys got to clean that up. So I've been to Israel one time. I get emails all the time about going back to Israel. Ministries, Kufi, Israeli government. They want me to. I'm not. I got to clean that up. Like, I'm not going. Clean it up. Figure it out. Like, it's been 2 years. This was supposed to be this, like, the when we declared victory in Iraq and then stayed another 20 years. It's like, is this indefinite now? You know how long is this going to go on? And so I say all that to say I can't speak to the policies of the IDF and if they're intentionally doing things. I don't know.
What I'm asking is from a scriptural standpoint.
Yeah.
We hear that they're God's chosen people. Are they God's chosen people? I thought there was a new covenant that encompassed all of us. Am I wrong about that?
I think so. So what we're getting at is dispensationalism, which is a view amongst many Christians. I do not identify as a dispensationalist. So dispensationalists will believe that Israel and Jewish people are under a different dispensational period and Christians are under a different period, right? I had somebody on recently to really go deep on dispensationalism and to say, hey, like, is this stuff accurate? Is Israel under a different period? So like Andrew Klavan from the Daily Wire will say stuff like, I don't think Andrew Klavan's a Christian. I don't think Ben Shapiro needs to come to faith in Jesus because he's doing great as a Jew, right? And it's like, no. Ben Shapiro needs to come to faith in Jesus. I want Ben Shapiro to be a Christian. I'm not going to water that down. He needs Jesus. So you're getting at dispensationalism. I hold to the view that the church is the continuation of Israel, and God has something planned for Israel, and I don't know how it's all going to work out. There seems to be a lot with the prophecies and a lot with just the establishment of them as a nation, a lot with these things. And so we've had these debates on my channel before. We've wrestled through the scriptures before, and there's a lot in here about all Israel will come to faith in Jesus at some point in Romans. I think it's Romans 10. I'm trying to find the verse for you right now. How it all plays out, it sure does seem like, man, everyone's rising up against Israel, but is Israel being sloppy? Those are questions someone like you is way more equipped to answer than me. I don't understand the geopolitics. I don't understand just war theory the way you do. But it seems like, man, the church is the church. I would say it's the continuation of New Israel. And God has some sort of plan for his original people. And that's in Scripture. That's in Romans. How that works? Oh, I wish I knew. I don't know. So Romans 10, I'm trying to find the verse for you. But not all Israel accepted the good news. For Isaiah said, Lord, who has believed our message? Consequently, faith comes from hearing the message, and the faith is heard through the word about Christ. But I did ask, they did not hear. So this is talking about Israel hearing but not accepting. Paul is talking about how he's so distraught that his people, Israel, aren't coming to faith. And then there's a verse that says, and all Israel will be saved. And I don't know what to do with that. Like, I don't know how that all works. I would like to believe that there's going to be some sort of revival where the Jews will come back to faith, right? Here it is, Romans 11:25. It says, I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers and sisters, so that you may not be conceited. Israel has experienced the hardening in part until the full number of Gentiles has come in. So Paul's going out to the Gentiles, the Jews, they don't like that. He's writing to a mixed church in Rome, both Gentiles and Jews. Gentiles are just non-Jewish people, non-Jewish Christians. Verse 26, and in this way, all Israel will be saved. As it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will turn godlessness away from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. As far as the gospel is concerned, they are enemies for your sake. But as far as election is concerned, they are loved on accounts of the patriarchs, for God's gifts are irrevocable. There's a lot of tension there. It says all Israel will be saved. It says they're hardened right now, but it says that because of the patriarchs, because of Abraham, because of Jacob, that at some point it sounds like God's gonna turn Israel to him, back to Jesus. I don't know how that works.
Me neither. I don't know how it works either. I mean, you know, and then there's the other hand where you hear, you know, the only way to the Father is through me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they don't believe in him, how do they get there?
Yeah.
And what happens to all of the Gentiles who didn't believe? I mean, is we on a different, you know, system?
Yeah.
What do you mean by a different timeline?
Dispensationalism is the view that there's different dispensational periods and that God interacts with his people in different agreements. And so the Jews are under a different dispensational period, and we as Christians are under a new one. So sometimes that can look real wonky, and saying like Christians that are like really into Israeli stuff and just give Israel a blank check to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that can look, right? And I don't want to name names on here. We've talked about this on my channel extensively. I had my friend on who's a dispensationalist, and we were trying to kind of hash this out, you know, because he was like, you sound like a dispensationalist. I'm like, I'm not a dispensationalist. You need to believe in Jesus, right? Whereas covenantal theology, which would be, hey, there are different covenants that God has, and we are under the new covenant, and the church has replaced Israel as the new Israel. So I'm kind of in between both positions. I think God is going to save Israel, and I think God has a plan for Israel. I don't know how that works.
Well, I figured I haven't had a truly controversial show in a while. I wouldn't have expected it to go down this road. But like I said, when it is important, and I don't want to downplay that. I don't want to make it seem as if, oh, you know, I don't care about what's happening in the Middle East. It's not that I don't care about what's happening in the Middle East. It's that it's going to be the center of all of our attention at some point in the near future. So in the meantime, I'd rather focus on what's happening here, what's happening with the hostages, what's happening with the people in Gaza, all horrible stuff. I want it all to end, but you know, just not too into it when we have our own challenges here. With that said, the understanding of biblical prophecy is something that is near and dear to my heart. And when we do see, and many of you will probably be, I'm hoping that you do, you say, no, look at this. It is happening. This is the end times. We are already seeing it. You're just missing it. And it's possible. You know, I think part of me wants to not see it sometimes. I know that sounds awful, but it's true. You know, I don't want to, because I know what's going to happen once it does appear that we are deep in the middle of the end times period. Then at that point it's going to be like, wow, that's going to encompass me. My show will almost certainly change. When I say almost certainly, it will change, because at that point then nothing else matters. It really doesn't. Okay, at that point it's just too important to focus on the little things. Maybe part of me regrets that possibility. Maybe I want to focus more frivolous things that are happening around the world. That would be a weakness, but I think that's part of human nature. With that said, if we are indeed in the end times, and if that becomes more apparent to me, then I will be ready to change my show, change my focus, because I don't think that Gaza is the trigger point for a lot of the end times events to start taking place. But I'm not so naive to think that I couldn't be wrong. I could very much be wrong, and we could be seeing it unfolding now. So we'll stay frosty. We'll keep watching. Yeah, I want to make sure that I don't mislead anybody. I have very, very strong opinions about prophecy, about salvation, and I try to keep it very simple, because my show's never been really about that stuff. But let's call it what it is. Maybe it should be. Maybe now is the time when we make that shift away from the boring stuff, such as politics and culture, and start focusing on the unfolding of events as we approach the end of time. Are we there yet? I'm open to consider it, and if you think that we are, then please let me know. Again, you can always hit me up on X. I have open DMs. x.com/jdrucker, or you can go to jdrucker.com/talk, and that will come directly to me. And I try to respond to as many people as I can every single day. So reach me there. We know that the times are crazy. I do believe that the end times are very near. I think that the events in the various books of prophecy, not just Revelation, but also Daniel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, we can look at it and see where we are today based